Hi, John Kavakis here with another episode of My Take. Today, we have another of our series of interviews with folks in the hobby. I had the opportunity to sit down with Darren Mould of Brooklin Models. If you're a subscriber to this channel, you know I'm a fan of Darren's work in creating the best Brooklyns ever to come out of the factory. Let's see what Darren has to say about Brooklyn's past, present, and future, and his involvement with it. Darren Mould, how you doing?
I'm fine, thank you very much. And you?
Doing fantastic. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you guys have got your hands full.
Yeah, no worries,
Hey,
no worries.
I understand that you started out as a jeweler. Now, how long ago was that? What type of jewelry did you make, and who'd you make it for?
So, I think it's about 1983 when I left school. Um, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no real ideas of anything, and I had no interest in metalwork at school or woodwork or anything really. Um, so I kind of fell into this thing called like a YTS scheme, where it's a government backed scheme that basically trains young people into something. And I wanted to initially do some drawing, because I used to like drawing. Anyway, this thing came up about working with jewelry and doing a bit of design and stuff like that. So I went for that, and so I worked for a local jewelers, and they basically trained me how to make jewelry. That's so it was kind of a bit by accident, really. I didn't really. It's not something I really wanted to do. It's just I kind of fell into it. Um, so yeah, it's for a local company. I worked there until 1987, so 4 years, I'd say full time. I then worked another. Then when I went to Brooklyn, I still did weekend work for a couple of years after that. So I did about sort of 5 or 6 years with this jewelry company, or just like a local, independent jewelers.
So
Um,
did you enjoy that work? Did you enjoy
oh yeah,
working
yeah,
with your
no,
hands?
yeah, I loved it. Yeah, it was really because so for the first year that I was there, I think the YTS scheme was for a couple of years, I had a chance to go to college and learn the trade, like go to college and learn all the theory and this and that. Um, but I didn't get a place because they'd already seen that I had like a job, a jewelry, an actual shop, so they gave it the place to somebody else. Then someone else dropped out and they offered me a place, and I refused it because I learned more in a year working with a guy who showed me all the skills and this and that, making things or making jewelry repairs for customers. I learned more in a year than I would have done in the whole 3 years of going to college, of being
Wow.
on the job. So I stayed at jewelers, and yeah, no, I really liked it. It was really good.
I see that hand in your work. I got to know some of the guys over at EMC and Mikhail Bashmashnikov. I don't know if you've met him, but
No.
he's got B&G models over here and he represents EMC. But these guys were all involved in miniaturization at some level.
Yeah.
And that passion for accuracy, I see that in your work. And it makes sense to me that you've done work in jewelry and you kind of carried that with you. How did you get started with Brooklyn?
Again, that was a bit by accident, I suppose, because so the guy that trained me, so the company I worked for, he decided to sell up, so that was it. So I was going to be out of a job, and the guy who trained me, he was initially approached by John Hall to do a job that I'm doing now, because I don't know how he found out, but he wanted somebody with jewelry skills or skills to take over what John Hall was doing with working with the masters. And I mean, John wasn't he wasn't like trained in any way like I was or anybody else, but he wanted somebody to take over from him because he was sort of getting older. Anyway, so Nick, he was the guy who trained me. He would already had his own business lined up, so he's now set up his own jewelry business, pretty much just cut the streets down from where we used to work, and he's still there now. He's got another shop, sort of 20 miles away as well. So he said to me, "Look, why didn't you go for it?" And I wasn't sure at first. I was a bit, because I enjoyed myself so much at the jewelry. I was just so gutted that I was going to leave there that I wasn't sure whether to go to like making model cars. It was just so different. Now, I did go when I spoke to John, and yeah, it looked when you go to factory and you see all the processes, see what was going on, it explained in how kind of what he wanted sort of done and where it was going, and it looked really interesting. So that piqued my interest, and then so that was it. I got the job.
So you worked with John Hall first.
Yeah, yeah. He
What
showed
was it
me.
like working with John?
No, it was great. He was a really nice boss. Yeah, he
Hmm.
was he was, he was really good.
How long did you work with him?
Oh, crumbs. Yeah, a good few years, and then he
Hmm.
gradually let me take the reins a little bit, and do more and more. When I first went there, I didn't go straight and work with John, so I did a little bit of casting. Well, mostly casting and cleaning up and stuff like that to get an idea of how the process works, and then assembly as well. So I worked upstairs with the girls and learned how to build the models and see how they went together. And then I went in, worked with John, and worked on the masters, and then understand how pieces interact with each other, and the way that molds work, and it is like a puzzle that has to go together, and there are so many different things that could go wrong that can interfere with the way things go together, and you've got to try and anticipate all of those when you're working on masters and making things. And you've got to bear in mind you've got there's the guys that have to paint them, there's guys who've got to cast them, there's Neil that has to make the molds. You've got to bear all that in mind, and you only get that once you do some casting, and then you do some building, and you understand the processes.
So you've done a little bit of everything in putting a model together. You got
Yeah,
familiar
yeah.
with the
I've done
process.
a little bit of spraying, I suppose.
Yeah.
I made a couple of molds.
Okay, so 30 years, you look a lot younger than that. So I
Well,
think
I've
the
been here
work you do is a
30,
credit to that.
37.
Tell us a little bit about what the atmosphere was like back then. What was it like working with Brooklin? Were you at the top of your game? Was everybody excited? How many people did you have? What was the general feeling like?
So when I first went there, I mean, we would have, I don't know, 18, 20 people plus, working in the factory, because the factory we're in was quite a bit much bigger than what we have here. It was there were a lot of people coming and going. You had your core people like, sort of Neil and a few casters and a few assemblers that were always there, but there were other people coming and going all the time. But it was great. It was like a family. People, you have your squabbles and you have your arguments, and and everything like that. But that's part of working with a team.
Yeah.
You take the rough and the smooth. There are some people where you should think, oh, they annoy you so much, and some people find me annoying as well. But like, if
Yeah.
anybody outside came in and had a go at one of your colleagues, you'll be first to say, no, 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 you don't do that. It's our family. You know what I mean? It was a great atmosphere. I like working with a lot of people, and it was a really sad time when a lot of people were laid off and it shrank down. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that
Um,
was painful for all of us to watch it happen. You had a chance to do a little bit of everything. Sounds like you had a pretty good atmosphere to
yeah.
work in. I know there was a lot of excitement back then. You were producing about how many models a year?
So the way our schedules work, I suppose they used to be like across 16 weeks. So from the point where I start with the master, and then 16 weeks later, it would start to be built, and then of course I'm then on the next model, and so it was all staggered. So when they finished,
In rotation, there was always something working. One of the things that I hear frequently is, "Oh my gosh, Brooklyn's have gotten so expensive." But when I first got in the hobby, they were expensive back then, 2000, 2002. I think I got my first Brooklyn in 1992, 19, something like that. But I remember walking into a shop to buy one. Somebody gave me one. They gave me the 68 Shelby. So I thought, well, I'm going to go buy some more of these. And I walked in and went, oh my gosh, you're 65 bucks. so, so
yeah.
and it wasn't until I had a chance to visit the factory that I understood exactly how handcrafted these things were. So Brooklyn's have always been kind of expensive. But they've always been a really good value for the money because of how much handiwork goes into each one. So the days were different back then. They were, I was seeing maybe 8, 10 models a year or so. Um, and the changes that we've been through, again, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the change we've been through, I mean, the quality is just so much better than they used to be in the past. They were charming back then. The and you were involved in all that. Do you remember the first master that you had a significant contribution to?
The first master I can remember working um, on my own, which so it wasn't made by me, but so when a master comes in, quite often the master makers don't understand our processes and how we work. So they'll make something that fits together for them because it looks good, but it won't work in a rubber mold. It's just so when it comes to me, I have to look at that and think, right, sometimes some bits need to be remade or redesigned, or maybe it's a little bit scruffy and he's neatening up and stuff like that. But the first model I can remember working on like that was the Chevy Nomad. I think it's a BRK 26. I think.
Wow.
Chevy Nomad was the first, but the first master that I made from scratch was a caravan. It was I think it's a Pierce Arrow. It was quite simple, basic, slab-sided, straight sides, slightly angled, loads of little rivet holes all over. So it was all quite square and, so that was the first one I made.
Can you describe the process and how you come up with the master? I mean, do you just start out with a hunk of metal and you make something, or what does it look like?
So for me, man, because I made jewelry and I wasn't trained like some of the model makers that work in brass, and some people actually make panels out of brass, solder them together and do the car that way. I don't do it like that. I would make like a block. So it's with that one, I just made a brass block, poured resin into it, and then filed that up. And much the same as like I did the Cunningham, the Chevy Monza, the Lansdowne, the VA. But I would actually make that out of a solid lump of resin. So some bits, like if you've got wheel arches, I might make them separately, and then you stick it onto the block, and you have a solid block. I would then send that away. That gets to like John Wright. He does all of our castings, and he would actually cast that in brass, and then coming back to me. And once I have it cast in brass, that's when then I make all the bits I need.
You start out with pictures.
So I don't do any of the computer stuff. I'm more old school. I don't know how to do 3D printing or stuff like that. With the Cunningham, we actually found a car that was in the UK. We went and visited it, took loads of photographs. We have like a drawings of it, and then we do all the measurements, the wheelbase and the size of the windows and all this sort of stuff. Write it all down, and then come back here, and then I measure up some kind of. I would make like a brass cage, a brass flask sort of thing, rough shape of the car, pour resin into it, and then just grind and file and do it that way. The windows, I would tend to actually make them out of brass because that's quite small. Because I use a jeweler's saw, I can cut out nice intricate window shapes and then let that into the resin block, so that I got nice neat windows. So then you have a solid block, which then you get a mold made, and then I think so you get mold made, and then it gets wax. They put wax on the inside of the mold, pour the other half into the mold. And then when you pour the brass into it, it melts and basically comes out, and then the brass takes over the shape of the car, and then you have your shell then.
So this is actually more intricate than I thought, because you're bringing this thing together by sight. So are you looking at pictures of the car and going, okay, I think I got it right, or I need to adjust it?
Yeah. I mean, everybody who makes models, it's their interpretation of what it looks like. And unless you have like CAD drawings where you can do on the computer and everything would be perfect. Any model making is really just your interpretation. You have as much information as you can get with photographs, any measurements you do. So we would take loads of measurements, the different pillars, A pillars, C pillars, all that, the windows, door handles, the lights, the diameter of the wheels, everything. So you would literally measure. It would take all day, just loads and loads of measurements.
Okay, Darren, I'm gonna tell you something. I am far more impressed than I anticipated that I would be. That's because I see little things like on the Caribbean, on the Packard, there's a contour to the rear deck. I don't know what you call it over in England, the rear bonnet, the trunk lid. There's a
Okay.
contour to the trunk lid that you got that I don't think everybody else saw. There have been several renditions of the Caribbean out, most of them in resin, maybe older white metal. But that really impressed me because the the accuracy of that trunk lid, which was kind of a compound curve. And so if what I hear you saying is that you eyeballed that and got it.
So with the Caribbean, I already had a master. It was it a patrician? I think it was Packard
Yeah,
patrician, wasn't it?
patrician. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to cut the roof off of that. Um, I can't, I'm trying to think what I did to that master because I actually had to add a lot of stuff.
There
So I had
was
a lot of filler to the original
there was a
brass
lot of
master.
work.
Yeah, so I had a lot of filler to the brass master, shaped that as best I could, then got another casting from it. So I didn't actually make that master from scratch itself. I made all the components, a lot of the grill, the bumpers, and things like that. But the actual body itself, I didn't make that.
Well, I was familiar with the patrician, and one of my concerns early on was there were so many differences between the patrician and the Caribbean, and you got them. So whatever teamwork you did there, it worked, came
Yeah,
out
the,
with a
the
really,
actual the actual the rear fenders had a nice curve on it as opposed to
yeah.
that sort of chopped angle. So I had to fill that, and then again there's the bonnet. The bonnet was a completely different shape.
Give us a quick overview in the new operation. You're there with Neil,
Yeah,
and you guys are just outside of Bath. Is that correct?
yes, right,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you and Neil are working there. Give us a quick overview. Now you've got the master. How does that become a model? What process do you go through?
So okay, let's say if we take an existing, let's say the Morris Minor, for instance, to say that. So I get the original master, and obviously I compare that to photographs and pictures of the new one, and it's got a different grill. It's mostly the grill and little bits of detail to it. So I sit in my office and I make the new grill, the surround and stuff like that. I work on the body, and then once I'm happy with that, Neil then makes molds, and we get secondaries from that. So rather than just cast one headlight at a time, might cast sort of half a dozen in pewter because pewter gives a nice finish, and then make a mold from that. So you have six headlights, and then cast those.
So the casting's done. Do you do the assembly? You're not
Oh,
painting there.
yeah, do this. So the only thing we don't do is the spraying, and we have a tiny little spray thing here if I want to say spray something that's black base paint or black roof piece or whatever. But most of this painting's done down SMTS. Then it can send back up to us, and we build it.
Well, who moves them back and forth? You?
Depends on what it is. Yeah, Simon sometimes will come up and bring some work up with him. Depending if it's not been painted, it's just cast. We sometimes send that down to SMTS by courier, and then send it back by courier. But if it's a built model or painted, we tend to either I'll drive down to SMTS and take it with me, or he drives up. Yeah, because couriers, they just lob stuff everywhere.
How long a drive is that?
Take 4 hours.
So you're doing all the casting. You're making all the parts right there. You and Neil are making the parts. They're doing
Yeah,
the painting in SMTS.
yeah,
And then do you do the final assembly in your location?
and do the final
Yeah.
assembly.
So for those people that are concerned about whether or not these are Brooklyns, these are Brooklyns. You're just having SMTS paint them.
Yeah. It's still me nil. We still do it, and we still work the way that we work. There are a couple of things we've taken on from SMTS that we wouldn't normally do as a Brooklyn. Like we were never really into decals much,
Yeah.
really. Like
Hmm.
decals for scripts and stuff like that. We tended to
Hmm.
use plated actual etching. Um, but now we're moving over to sort of a more of a decal based,
Yeah, and
you
the
know.
technology on that seems to have improved as well. So I think one of the biggest improvements I've seen over the last few years are what you're calling decals. I would call badging, identification badges, that sort of thing. Some of those things seem to be a little bit of hand painted, but some of them are appliques as well.
Yeah.
And but they look good. You know, there was a day when it was obvious that they had put a decal on, and they're no longer as obvious. I think some of the biggest improvements I've seen have been in that minute detail work, which really kind of makes a model pop. You did something really interesting with the window surrounds on the 1946 Pontiac. Can you describe what you did with those?
So I get a casting, and sometimes I'll put a little bit of tape on the inside, and then smear some what we call plastic padding or filler into it. Let it go off. I would pick it out, and I would have the perfect shape of that window.
Uh,
Scribe around it. I'll then cut that out a piece of brass, so I have the shape of that window in solid brass. I'll then solder it onto another piece of brass, and then I would drill a hole into the bit that I soldered on, the actual window frame part, scribe around, cut the inside out, file it, and get it as fine as I possibly could. Once I was happy with it, I would then unsolder it and fall off. It would fall off, and then it would have a very thin wire frame. And I did that
ah,
with all the windows, and then we would then cast them and then send off and get plated. Um,
well,
so that
I'll tell
that's
you
that's
something, Darren. Yeah, that's some of the most realistic window surrounds I've seen. Just beautifully done. It
yeah.
sounds like really intricate work.
I did a similar kind of. I did the same thing for the Morris Minor with the windscreen and the rear. The only problem is like when you do that scale so fine, because like I say, when I made it in brass, it was really nice and dainty. But once you get plated, and that plating, I mean, it is thin, but it still adds thickness to the piece, and it can almost distort the piece as well to a certain degree, and make it look a little bit bulkier than you kind of hoped or anticipated. And I'm always critical of everything I do. Like I look at something and I'm thinking, I wish I'd done that. And you're always learning all the time. You can never say that you've cracked it. Every model is unique and completely different. And you look at something, it all has its own challenges. So you try and sort of up the ante a little bit, think, oh, I reckon I can do this, you know.
Mhm.
And then you give it a go, and you're thinking, and then so you're building it, and then as I'm building it, I'm thinking, do you know, I could have done this better. I could have done this different, you know, because sometimes you can go through making something and like you get 90% of the way there, and then either you mess it up and you think, so I try and fix it, and you can't fix. Sometimes you can't fix something. You just have to throw it and start again. You then think, I know what I did wrong. I know I can do better, and then you can do it again, and then yeah. So you're always learning, always finding things out. You know.
And you know the amazing thing about that is I think we can see that in the models, the constant improvement, the lessons you learned from models before going to improving the models you're making today. I remember when the company was first purchased. What I was seeing was the models that were coming out after that were getting progressively better, exponentially better with each new model. We saw these huge improvements in quality, and fidelity, and finish, and in detail. And as I said a little bit earlier, early on, Brooklyns were not noted for detail. They were a lot of fun. They were pretty decent representations of the cars. But when we start seeing batching coming out and trim and more intricate wheels and that sort of thing, that's when things start getting exciting. And so that
Yeah.
that eye that you have really shows up in the
And a
finished
lot. Yeah.
product.
And a lot of that is probably down to me pushing to do things, and quite often Nigel would say to me, no, you need to stop. You can't we're making this for like a price. I mean, you can't keep going and going and going. But so yeah, so like I say, with the windows with the Pontiac, that was the first time I thought we could cast these, and I wasn't quite sure how well it would work, and it did seem to work quite nice. I mean, again, it's not perfect. I look at it and thinking, oh, I reckon I could do better, still do better than that,
Mhm.
But there's always things against you. There's things, whether it's outside forces with either somebody plating it, or whether it's mold making, or whether it's the casting. There's always loads of different variables that seem to sort of get in your way sometimes, that you just have to accept. It's not perfect. It's a handmade model, and it's not a perfect system.
Yeah. Well, thank you for rising to the challenge there. So as you look back over the years you've been involved in Brooklyn, there got to be a couple of models that you are particularly fond of. Which ones, as you look back to, are you proud of?
My favorite, the one I enjoyed the most, in fact, you bought it recently, was the keg truck. Is it the bats? It's the bats in it. The Labatt's keg. That was my favorite project. It took a long time. I did all that in my own time.
Oh, really?
Because my wife back then, she used to work weekends. She works for a school, so quite often I was like, oh, not much to do. I used to pop into Brooklyn and just, and I did that in my own time. I mean, I did get paid for it, but I thought this is my little sort of project, so I did all that in my own time, and I really enjoyed making that. And it's really good fun. Yeah.
So
The,
can
the
you share a
barrels,
little
the
bit?
barrels were a challenge. That was a
Mhm.
really difficult, not just for me for making it, but also for everybody else that had to cast it and spray it, because it's such a big, heavy piece. Trying to keep the porosity down, it would always get so hot, and then spraying it was a nightmare. So yeah, I mean, we would probably do it a bit differently now, perhaps, but
Well, you've got quite a legacy there. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things you're working on without revealing too many secrets?
so well, at the moment I'm building the 355Bs. I've just screwed the chassis to the body at the moment.
Hey, let's talk about that car for just a second.
Yeah,
Now that car's in Rome, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the Vatican collection. I've seen some of the work being done on that, and it looks like you've got the detail, but the colors on that are interesting for a Vatican car. What colors are those?
So you've got a maroon body with a dark blue chassis, and then the wheel rim is dark blue, but the spokes on the spokes inside the wheel, they're maroon. So it's a bit strange.
Will those wheels be several pieces? How are you going to
Yeah.
handle that?
So the wheel is in. You have the actual wheel itself, and then you've got etching for the spokes. So there's two lots of different etching. One's slightly flat, which sits down inside, and then the top one is sort of curved to give that sort of curved shape, which then goes on top of that. So you get and they're offset a little bit. So you can see the depth of the spokes with a hubcap, and then there's a plated embellisher ring around the outside. So
Wow.
it's yeah. So you got your axle. The hubcap goes on the axle. The wheel goes on the axle. Then you got your two lots of etching. Then you got your plated embellisher ring, and then you got a hubcap goes
Wow.
in the middle.
So I think that sounds intricate. I'm fascinated by the colors. I'm really looking forward to see the finished product. There have been a couple models that Brooklyn has made that you really have to look at in person to see the color. I think it was the 1938 Chrysler Imperial convertible. It was actually a dark green.
Right.
Uh, yeah, and once you get that in your hand and you see the green in there, it changes the entire model. And I'm thinking that this new Cadillac's going to be the same thing. The Now that the works pretty well progressed on that, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm really hoping to get these done by um, certainly the end of next week. I'm really hoping to get them
Uh,
done by then. There's still quite a bit of work. So although I've screwed them together, I've got the grill to glue on, the door handles, the rear axle and bumper to do. It's um, it's quite a lot different to the way we'd normally. Well, this style of car has to be made the way that we've done it, because the way that the style of car it is. So there's still a few more bits to do on it.
I think the exciting thing about that car is one of the some of the strongest models that I've seen come out of Brooklin are those late 30s, early 40s car, and this seems to hit the sweet spot on that. So it's got all the right stuff. It's part of the NB Center collection. It's a late 30s and it's a unique car. So is there anything else you're working on you can share with us?
So, well, we've still got the Cadillac, the V16 Cadillac to process. So I've got that here, but when I'm going to get on that, I just don't know. Problem is, like, I'm tied up building to get the stuff out, and I'm not being able to get on and do my own like masterwork, So try and fit that in when I can. We got the Camaro coming up soon. That hoping that should be here by next week. The actual masters.
Wow.
Which Chris at MTS has designed in that. So he's done the body and some of the interior stuff. I've now got to make the bumpers and the wing mirrors and the exterior stuff.
Yeah, you and I talked about the unique front fascia, the grille, because there were two versions of that, weren't there?
We're doing the one with the lights open at the moment because of the badging is different. So it's not just a matter of changing the grille over, because then it's the badging. So we have Mr. B's one, which is quite a basic. So the ride height apparently different than the other cars. And then there's two others with different. You got like a medium scoop, and then you got a large scoop on the bonnet.
I know they had the RS version with the hidden headlights. It'd be nice to see that, but also, yeah, I've had a few people ask, well, if they do that, which colors are going to get which grill, and so that would be a little bit of a challenge as well, because I can see where people would want their color with their grill, and that's not necessarily.
Yeah, we're doing one grill, which is the lights open. I think it's 5 different colors. Then after that, we may release it with a different grill.
So you mentioned the Cadillac V16. That car is in Allentown. I've actually had a chance to ride in that car. What a magnificent car. I mean, the thing is huge. It is just huge. But that car is a survivor. So it's got a few nicks and dings and that sort of thing. Do you know if you're going to be doing that as a survivor? You'll be doing that as a restored car?
I'm assuming that it's exactly the same as Mr. B's one. I'm assuming without the dings and stuff like that. But
yeah. And of course, we already have the engine. A magnificent model of the engine. So it's going to make a nice pairing. And now I know there's some other things planned, some other things are talked about, but let me just talk to you for a minute or two, because there's been a lot of controversy over limited editions that people contract with you for. Jeff Lane's done some really magnificent models. You've done some beautiful work on Jeff's cars, and of course we have Elmo and that sort of thing. But those are projects that somebody has ordered from you, that somebody's coming and said, hey, we'll buy 50 or 70 or 100 of these or so. And those are not necessarily for general distribution, are they?
No. Well, I suppose they are for anybody who wants one, but I don't know how Jeff or how Mo, I know he has his own Elmo Facebook page, which he advertises on there. So I suppose unless you're aware of him doing that, and you're on his page, then yeah, it is for anybody. I don't think he has a club, and the same with Jeff Lane as well. I think it's just he'll just advertise it on his Facebook page, and so it is for anybody.
And those guys do sell out. They do sell out. But I think the hardest thing for some folks to understand is that if you want to be up to speed on all these, you have to stay in contact with people like Mo and his Elmos,
Yeah,
get on his mailing list.
yeah. I think you do need to keep an eye on the Facebook pages and find out, because they'll be announcing things all the time, and you just got to just keep an eye out.
But that would
Sorry,
not be something that Brooklyn would promote because technically it's a private contract.
that's right. Yeah, it wouldn't put it on the Brooklyn, unless of course Mo asked us to, or Jeff asked us to, But no, it's yeah. Quite often they say, look, they don't want to release anything yet until they'll release it on their own.
Yeah, and I know both of those guys. They're both great guys. They're dedicated to the hobby, but they're trying to do something special for their brand, for their projects and
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
yeah,
And they really are not looking for the wider distribution that would show up like on the Brooklyn web page or the BM outlet or anything like that. So, and for one, I think it's great because I know it keeps you guys busy, and there's no question about how many you're going to sell because they're made to order.
Mo has an idea. I don't know about Jeff, but I know Mo has an idea of the sort of numbers he's going to sell, and so he has to take a chance himself on how many he orders, because if he's because he has to pay for that, but he seems to have quite a handle on how many he's going to sell. I mean, he pretty much sells out of everything that he does,
Yeah.
And then if the interest was there, I'm sure he would probably, order more if he thought the interest was there. So,
And I think that might be another factor that not a lot of people understand is when these guys order these models, they have to buy them from you. They have to pay. So it's not like
yeah,
they've ordered them and then you send as many as they can and then they pay you afterwards. That money has to come up front.
that's
Uh,
right. Yeah,
and so anybody who's interested in ordering 50 or 70 or 100 models can contact Brooklyn and have them made.
yeah, I imagine so. Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, Simon's the one to sort of talk about that and
Sure.
decide that, I think, really.
Yeah.
But I mean, if work is work. I mean, if people want something, if we can fit it in, then yeah, we would.
Now, this is exciting. So let me just ask you this question before we end. If you could make any model of any car, what would you make?
This could upset some people, maybe, that I don't collect cars. I haven't a massive interest in cars. I just love the process of seeing something and trying to work out how to make it and make it work and create it. That's what I like. But
I think it's great, Darren. The idea that you're dedicated and committed to the process, and that means that you're not wedded to any particular model. That you want every model to be as good as you can make it. And I think that's what's kind of come up in our little chat here is that you enjoy making small things. and,
yeah, yeah,
I think it shows in your work. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I think you do some of the finest work I've seen in white metal.
well,
And
oh,
I'm
thank
proud to have your cars in my collection. So,
thank you for the compliment.
yeah, and I think we all regret the changes that Brooklyn's gone through over the last few years. They have been handled well, and it's a much smaller operation,
Yeah,
but at the same time, my gosh, these models that you guys are producing are just amazing. And going back to the pricing that we talked about earlier, proportionately, they're about the same as they've always been. The benefit that we're getting as collectors right now is greater fidelity, far greater detail than we ever imagined. I think you and Neil and Simon are producing the best white metal models I've ever seen. And I'm a high-end collector from way back. So I'm proud of the work you're doing, Darren.
thank you,
You know,
thank you.
is there anything you want to tell us before we go?
It is the future is looking quite good. I mean, I I think, and initially we were kind of worried about, will the collectors still be about? Will they still be interested? You know, but the work has actually, and of course, because the economic turned down in over here, and I don't know how things are in America, but things seem to be picking up, and that's people seem to be collecting again. So it's nice that like Jeff and Mo and the collectors and Lansdowne. It's nice seeing Lansdowne coming back. Actually, that is something I'm really pleased about. Because so this might interest you actually. Initially, when I'm working for Brooklin, I worked mostly on Brooklyns, all the American cars, and Mr. P, Ian Pinker, sorry, he worked on the Lansdownes, so that was his thing. So I've only just started working on Lansdownes myself since like he left, and so it's nice to see that coming back. Some English cars. So yeah, I mean we got
now. You're working on an Avenger, aren't you?
Yeah. The Avenger Tiger. We got 2 versions of that coming out. So a lot of the castings have been done pretty much. The bodies. There's a couple of interior bits that need to be cast, or the plating's done, I think, pretty much. So we're almost ready to go on that, and that's hopefully going to be in the first quarter of next year, hopefully. Mm-hmm. Depends on how the Camaro is going to go, because that's a big job, and there's a lot of numbers on that.
Wow.
So hopefully in the new year we'll start on the Adventure Tiger. I've done a little. We've done just. I don't know whether we will do it, but we've got the Morris Miners, because there was a TV program in the 80s over here. It was called Lovejoy, and he drove around in a Morris Minor convertible. It was Falga blue with a tan or creaming interior. So we were thinking we might do something like that, but of course, like we just released the Morris Minor, the millionth one. So it's judging it right, really, whether the customers want another. We went ahead and done it anyway, just because it's quite quick and easy to do, So it's there if we need something. We've also got the hot rod. Still got that hot rod as well.
Oh, the hot rod. Yeah. That's right, because you've been working on engine and chassis detail, haven't you?
Yeah. No, that's all. Again, that's all cast. We got the plating here for it. It's all down SMTS. It just needs. We got to decide on the color and needs spraying. I need to redo. I'm redoing the grill, change the grill slightly. Another couple of little minor modifications. But that's pretty much ready to go.
Yeah, we've got Brooklyn's coming. We've got some Lansdownes coming. It looks like the next year and a half are going to be pretty exciting.
Oh, one more thing I will say.
Yeah, sure.
We got a Caballero.
Oh, now there's a secret.
So I've got a casting somewhere. I'll find that. But we were going to turn it into station wagon. So, but there's a lot of work in that with the cage and the roof, especially the roof. The roof's quite tricky because it's got like plated ribs. Mm-hmm. Coming from the back half backwards, so that would be a challenge. Work out how to do that, but again, I don't know when I'll get onto that. But that was, we started that way back in the other factory. Might be a bit of a wait, but that's something that
It's nice to know they're coming. It's nice to know they're coming. I know it's going to take a while. Okay, Darren, thank you very much. Well, we got cut short there. We had some audio problems right at the end. I apologize. Darren did have some more comments, mostly that he would like to come back and spend some more time with us. I'd really like to spend some time going over the process of how these models are made. So we'll have him back again real soon. Hey, thanks for joining us. If you like it, give me a thumbs up. Of course, we'd love to have you as a subscriber. I've got more interviews. I've got more new models coming up. Thanks for watching.